scary movie. Turn on the patio lights.
Previously on MatPat. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no maybes. The Roaring Knight is Rudy Holiday. I changed my mind. Also, why is she blue? A couple of days ago, I was watching SPAMINGO'S video on the Rudy Knight theory, which they released a couple of days after mine. Yeah, sorry if I blew up your spot, dude. I didn't mean to do that. And I thought it was interesting. He raised a lot of points that I hadn't considered, as well as one thing I had strongly considered, and which I didn't think anyone else had.
Although the room is often referred to as Carol's bedroom, Noelle herself refers to it as her parents' bedroom, which of course includes Rudy. This means that the corkboard and the black katana we can see inside aren't necessarily Carol's sole property. They are something that both Rudy and Carol likely share.
You son of a bitch.
Okay, I am locked the fuck into matching couples katanas theory now that I know other people have noticed it too. Oh baby. But one of the things he said really stuck with me.
After all, we have to consider that the Knight in the Dark World is wearing a strange armor that seemingly grants them tremendous power and changes the wearer's body.
I hadn't even considered that the armor the Knight was wearing might be the thing granting them their powers. And the first thought I had was, oh, it's like the Berserker armor. Wait a minute. So in the late great Kentaro Miura's Berserk, the Berserker armor was a suit of armor that granted whoever wore it a kind of super state. It prevents the wearer from feeling pain or fear, which allows them to overcome their own mental limitations and fight harder and become stronger, essentially. But it comes at a cost. It injures whoever's wearing it badly and pretty much guarantees they'll live a shorter life if they use it. And I thought that was interesting, especially when, now having considered it, I realized that there are quite a lot of visual similarities between the Roaring Knight's armor to the Berserker armor. And that got me thinking, maybe being the Roaring Knight is something that causes damage to the user. That might even be the reason Rudy's hospitalized, because he's been using the Roaring Knight armor too much. There's a character in Marvel Comics called Jane Foster who has kind of a similar thing going on. She can turn into Thor, but I don't really want to go into that. It's pretty boring. And this itself further convinced me that Rudy Holiday probably is the Roaring Knight. This possibility that the Roaring Knight's armor, like the Berserker armor, harms the wielder being the reason Rudy's in a hospital, it seems to tie together very neatly. But then I kept watching the video and something happened to me which has never happened before. In attempting to convince me that one individual was the Roaring Knight, SPAMINGO'S video actually persuaded me of a different option.
Asgore's set up to be an important character in the story. Some dialogue even suggests a direct link between him and the Knight.
Cause it got me thinking,
A dangerous pastime?
No.
what the heck is the Black Shard? Why is it so important that Asgore has one too, and he brings it up when he's talking to himself? It has to be used for something, and it has to be something important, something no other item could do. And so that made me think, and what I came up with was that this might be related to the Knight's armor. Maybe the Black Shard can be used to transform a monster into the Roaring Knight, to henshin, if you will. Kamen Rider is so cool, you guys. And I think if Asgore has it, he has to be the one using it. There wouldn't be so much importance placed on Asgore having the Black Shard if all he did with it was hand it to Rudy or perhaps Carol for them to transform. SPAMINGO supplied the following evidence that Asgore is not the Roaring Knight.
Like with Azrael, Asgore's large body doesn't match with the Knight's slender figure. Unless the armor can change the user's body shape somehow, which seems unlikely, this is another solid point against Asgore.
Why does that seem unlikely though? We know the Knight can shapeshift. That's one of the first things we see it do. It turns into a ball, turns into a bird, or perhaps indeed a legless deer, as Jared Hacker 3865 suggested. We know it can change the shape of the user's body. Why wouldn't it do that in its default state? In fact, it must do, because look at that fucking snatched waist, that size negative infinity waist. Nobody looks like that. Rudy hasn't been eating and he doesn't look like that. So clearly it's changing the user's body shape somehow. There's no reason why it couldn't be a lot. Personality-wise, the Knight doesn't suit Asgore, but maybe the armor changes your personality. It sure does in Berserk. It's not uncommon for a magical costume change to have an effect on the wearer's personality. And you might be asking, well, Chris has a Roaring Shard if you defeat the Knight in Chapter 3. Why can't they use it to transform? And I think the reason is that they're a human. It could just be because they don't know how, like they haven't learned what to do with it. Maybe there's some kind of ritual you have to do involving the shard to transform. It's not as easy as just plugging it into yourself. But I think it's more likely that it's because they're not a monster. Humans are made of blood and stuff, solid objects. Monsters are made of dust, which could be more easily reshaped, I think. We know Noelle can equip the Black Shard. Noelle might be able to transform in a future chapter. That'd be pretty freaking cool. And so what I've concluded is that even though I know Rudy is the Roaring Knight, I think it's possible that he's not the only Roaring Knight, and that two old friends may now share that role. So true, bestie! I may have been putting too much focus on Rudy's black katana though, unsheathed and exposed to open air, because Rudy doesn't give a fuck about that. I think Team Knight, the Knight Gang, the Knight fan club, might be using the black shards to open fountains. A lot of focus is placed on how sharp they are, and the only other time sharp things are really mentioned in the game is that they can be used to open dark fountains, so I think there's very likely a connection there. Queen never mentioned how big the object would have to be. I think you could probably do it with a thumbtack if you thrust it in the earth hard enough. And that could be how the Night Gang are opening these, just discreetly carrying these black shards on them and sticking them in the ground when they have to. Maybe that's even the transformation process. Maybe you don't stick it in yourself. Maybe when you open a fountain with a black shard, that turns you into the knight. This is all speculation, but I think it's cool, so it's definitely true.
Obviously, I can't say for sure why the knight laughed there, but it is important to remember that laughter isn't always linked to happiness or amusement. There's even an example of that in Deltarune not long after the scene. When Susie destroys the final prophecy, she laughs as a way to calm both herself and Ralsei. Even though later on, we can still see Susie is clearly worried, coming to Chris's window to promise that the prophecy will never come true, signaling that she does indeed take the situation seriously.
Very true. I think, again, the fact that there are these two scenes heavily focused on laughing in the same chapter, not even very far apart, I think they're clearly meant to be linked. I agree that the knight's laughter, like Susie's laughter, could be an attempt to mask something, some kind of anxiety, like a fear of getting beaten up in the light world, maybe even just a fear of being found out.
I would also like to point out that, since we saw him at the church in Chapter 4, Rudy can freely leave the hospital whenever he wants. He's not obligated to stay there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is a good point, because the church scene is placed right after the end of chapter 3, when you first meet the knight. Maybe that scene is meant to inform the viewer that Rudy's capable of leaving his hospital bed and walking around if he needs to. Before chapters 3 and 4 came out, you could have ruled out Rudy by saying, well, we've never seen him get up and walk, maybe he can't. And then as of the start of chapter 4, which of course comes right after the end of chapter 3, we know he can. It's possible that that's what Toby was trying to communicate to us, not that he's very healthy after a mission that should have made him sick, because I don't know, we haven't really been given any clear reason to believe being the knight is causing pain to whoever's doing it. Look at the knighting scene. I've just been assuming that's Rudy, but imagine if it's Asgore having his personality kind of shifted to be made more aggressive and mischievous by the knight armor. I mean, who better to make you kneel than your father? Pause? It's been pointed out that Rudy is completely missable. You can play all of Deltarune without once talking to him. But I think if you want to solve the mystery of Deltarune and piece together clues and find out who's who and what's what, you do actually need to play the game and go digging a little bit, try and find stuff. Being able to solve the knight's identity being a reward for more attentive, meticulous gamers is fine. I think it's fine if it's not a big reveal to everyone who plays, if they're just blasting through the game. I think if that's what you're doing, you probably aren't that interested in solving the mysteries to begin with. You just want to play some turn-based Toho. And the Deltarune fanbase, they're big-time searchers, they're big-time lookers anyway, and I think Toby knows that. I think that's why he's made the knight's identity solvable, but only to those who really go looking for it, like me. Thematically, sorry, I have a cold. Thematically, Rudy works very well as the antagonist too. For a man in his position, escapism can be very powerful and healthy. We see he has a very healthy relationship with video games. He clearly loves them a lot and enjoys playing them with his kid. In this way, Rudy illustrates the strength of escapism, you know, the benefits it can provide people with. A guy like that, you know, a guy with a full grasp of the healing power of escapism, becoming the most powerful being in the dark world, in the worlds composed of escapist fantasy, I think is a good fit. I think that makes sense. On a less thematic, but more you feel very clever for catching it kind of level, something people love to say is that Des must be the knight because of the recurring baseball motif present in its attacks and animations and stuff. And they'll say, well, no other character has a direct connection to baseball. Let me stop you right there. No other character, as far as we're aware, has a direct connection to baseball. But what one must consider is that baseball is a team sport. And I mean, even if you don't have teams, the minimum number of people you can play it with is 2. So who is Des playing baseball with? Who do you think taught her to play baseball. You think it was Carol? I don't think it was Carol. I think it's very cute to imagine Rudy playing baseball with Des as a kid and teaching her how to play and inspiring this love in her. And if that was the case, baseball would be something Rudy very heavily associated with his daughter, hence him deploying a number of baseball-related techniques in his Dark World form. At subscribe to Technoblade4021 supplied a lot of evidence toward this being a case. I'll just show his comment up on screen for a second. Thank you very much at subscribe to Technoblade4021 for your thoughtful and insightful comment. Okay, enough about themes. Forget recurring motifs and subtle characterization through implication. Blah. Gross. Let's look at the facts. Number 1, the black shard must be significant somehow, otherwise it wouldn't keep coming up in important seeming scenes. Number 2, Asgore has a black shard. Number 3, Asgore is connected to Rudy Holiday. And number 4, Rudy Holiday, as we know, is the Roaring Knight. So in conclusion, either Asgore is Rudy's gay little squire, and if you don't think I have clearance to use the word gay in that fashion, come the fuck on. I mean, good for you for not assuming, but come the fuck on. Or Asgore Dreamer and Rudy Holiday are both the Roaring Knight. Oh, it'd be disappointing if there turned out to be 2 Roaring Knights. Yeah, like how the reveal at the end of Scream 1 was such a massive letdown and not one of the greatest movie twists of all time. If you don't like the 2 Knights theory, I think it's possible that Carol is also a knight. I kind of like that idea the most, maybe. I think that would really feed into the theme of youth versus age that Deltarune is kind of soaked in. We have these 3, rebellious young characters fighting against the trappings of their lives, their destinies as mapped out for them by other people. Noelle's parents have very high expectations of her. Everyone has expectations of Susie that they're molding her into via their expectations. Chris just doesn't feel like they fit in anyway. It's fucking Breakfast Club. It's fucking Breakfast Club. Jesus Christ. And so having the main antagonistic threat be 3 parental figures, 3 real symbols of that looming oppressive ruling force in their lives. Kids having to actually fight and overcome those guys would be very, very thematically satisfying. I'm banning myself from saying thematically. I think I've said it too many times in this video. But as I'm sure you've all observed, all of the adults in Deltarune are either getting in the way or providing some kind of obstacle, some kind of challenge for the kids to overcome. Rudy being the main exception, but for that reason it would be interesting to reveal that he was one of the main figures standing in the way of the kids accomplishing their goals. It's almost kind of a twist reveal that, yes indeed, all of the adults in their lives, presenting them with challenges that they have to overcome, even the one who seems relatively chill and, frankly, for a handful of reasons, non-threatening. The one exception is Gerson, but I think Gerson, crucially, is very young at heart. He's the one character who holds on to his youth and his childlike sense of hope. So it makes sense that he's the one adult character who's a really positive force on the main kids' lives. So we've gone over the evidence, we've gone over the can we look at the reasons why? Could we consider maybe why, from a Doyleist perspective, rather than a Watsonian one, Google those words if you don't know what they mean, why did Toby Fox decide to write a story about adults exploiting a tool for their own ends, which slowly kills them in the process? I brought up Berserk a lot in this video. I think if Toby's drawing deliberate parallels to the Berserker armor, he may have a slightly more personal reason for doing that than just thinking Berserk was cool. Kentaro Miura died, and it's not really my place to speculate, but he was ill a lot of the time, and much of that seems to have been caused or at least exacerbated by his overworking. Yoshiro Togashi, the author of Yu Yu Hakusho and Hunter x Hunter, is another famous example of a mangaka whose work schedule has caused him permanent life-altering health issues, and he's been a little more public about the specifics of his, without knowing exactly what hours he kept or how strenuous the process was. While working on Yu Yu Hakusho, Togashi was working so hard and for such long hours that he was unable to sleep afterwards, which was causing him heart pain. While working on Hunter x Hunter, he began to suffer from back issues that were so bad he was unable to sit in a chair for 2 years. And then, instead of cancelling his series, he resumed working on it by learning to draw while lying down. And this is just one example who's been more public than some of the others about his issues. Guys like Tite Kubo and Masashi Kishimoto and dozens of others have talked about working for 16 to 20 hours a day 6 days a week, only taking Sundays off, sometimes not taking Sundays off, sometimes working every day. And while this is a real epidemic among mangaka, particularly those who work for Shonen Jump, they're not the only ones. Animators famously are forced to work under similar conditions, not just in Japan, around the world. Artists of any kind. And of course, game developers. Games like Red Dead Redemption 2 are famous for having studio work conditions which encouraged, to a dangerous level, overworking, sleeping in the office, eliminating any kind of personal life, recreational time, any form of rest in favor of just working and working and working and working and working. Masahiro Sakurai recently revealed that he had a schedule where he would work for 40 hours straight, then sleep for 4 hours, then get back on another 40-hour shift when he was developing Super Smash Bros. Melee, and he only stopped because he almost died. And Super Smash Bros. Melee, by sheer coincidence, is Deltarune creator Toby Fox's favorite game. It doesn't really mean anything, but it is funny in a way. Toby doesn't work for a big studio or anything. He doesn't have deadlines set by anyone other than himself. But I think a combination of expectations, the hopes of his fans, a sense of perfectionism, a drive, just kind of the way he's built, those things affect certain people in certain ways. And Toby famously has fallen into the trap of foregoing living life in favor of making his video game. Deltarune is a game about escapism, and as I've recently learned, one of the most engrossing forms of escapism is throwing yourself into your work. You should see the state of my bedroom right now. I haven't cleaned it in weeks. And I think if there's a form of escapism that Toby himself engages in, more so than just playing and enjoying games or anything like that, it's work. Toby clearly really loves his work and throws himself hard into it to the point of injury. His hands don't work the same anymore, and they probably never will because he worked too hard on Deltarune, and he's still doing it. And I think if the knight's armor is slowly killing its wearer, that may be kind of a reflection of Toby's work. The message of Deltarune thus far is that escapism's great, it can be fun, it can be really good for you in moderation. And if you overindulge in it, it can really hurt you. And I think that's an important lesson Toby himself has learned and is trying to internalize. And since that's most of what's going on in his life right now, according to him, all he really does is work. Why wouldn't the game be about that? About a couple of guys who get too lost in the thing they're working towards and they get stuck. Stuck in the past, stuck in your work, unstuck from your real life. And that shit sucks. Don't do that. Okay, that's a structural mess.